Right now on the National Weather Desk, here comes Idalia. The rapidly strengthening hurricane is heading for Florida's Gulf Coast.
Likely becoming a Category 3 hurricane, maybe by late tonight, early tomorrow morning.
Our team coverage shows you the preparations.
Part of those preparations, boarding up the local businesses.
The safety warnings you need to hear.
This storm surge is the most deadly part of a hurricane.
And the dangers people living along the eastern seaboard could feel in the coming days.
So what exactly is a rip current and how can you and your family stay safe?
Plus, devastating flash flooding in West Virginia and what you need to know to watch this week's super blue moon.
From our nation's capital, this is the National Weather Desk.
Good morning and welcome to the National Weather Desk. I'm Angela Brown. Idalia is now a hurricane with maximum sustained winds of 80 miles an hour. But by this time tomorrow, it could be a major Cat 3 lashing Florida's Gulf Coast. We have extensive team coverage for you this morning, starting with meteorologist Lauren Oleski with the latest track.
So Idalia continues to strengthen this morning as of the 8 o'clock update from the National Hurricane Center. Winds are now up to 80 miles per hour. Seeing, of course, a little more organization there. I've been monitoring radar. Idalia is trying to form a more well-defined center and an eye. We do expect this to continue strengthening over those very warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico, likely becoming a Category 3 hurricane by early tomorrow morning before it makes landfall along the Big Bend tomorrow morning on Wednesday. We do have hurricane warnings in effect for the west coast of Florida, of course, along the Big Bend of the Gulf Coast down towards Tampa, the First Coast, Space Coast down towards Palm Bay. Tropical storm warnings in effect there, even into parts of southern Georgia, and there are tropical storm watches along the coast of South Carolina right now. The heaviest rainfall obviously fell near the center of the storm. That's going to be from areas near the panhandle of Florida through the center of Georgia, south and into North Carolina. You'll see some of these higher numbers up to around 6 inches. I think there could be locally higher amounts, maybe up to around 8 in a few areas, and then heavy rain still expected along the Gulf Coast of Florida. And then, of course, the most deadly aspect of a tropical system is the storm surge. There are storm surge warnings currently in effect for most of the Gulf Coast of Florida. Storm surge watches for southwest Florida. These storm surge levels could be anywhere from 8 up to 12 feet as Idalia makes landfall.
And from up in space, you can see just how Idalia continued to get bigger and more powerful. One reason is the bright orange you see on your screen indicating incredibly warm temperatures in the Gulf of Mexico. Many gas stations in the Tampa area are already out of gas, and Tampa's airport closed this morning and is not planning to reopen until Thursday. Danny Travis has more on how Florida is getting ready.
And part of those preparations, boarding up the local businesses.
Businesses can be seen with wooden boards and even tin covering the doors and windows. Closed signs can also be seen hanging in front of businesses along 2nd Street. Over on the mainland at Publix, we spoke with people who agree it's never too early to start preparing for the storm.
Right now I'm trying to get flashlights, candles, non-perishables, of course.
Non-perishable items like canned goods, crackers and chips, peanut butter, water and Gatorade are the best items you can buy.
And we have crews along the coast to cover Idalia when it arrives. That includes our storm tracer, Britt Adair. Right now he's in the Big Bend area of Florida getting ready to show us the power of the storm.
Looking for areas that we can put some remote camera boxes in that may not be so safe when this storm makes landfall, so that at least we can get a visual of what's happening in places like Steinhatchee, Horseshoe Beach, Cedar Key as the storm's ongoing, but it may not be very safe to be there. This area hasn't taken a hit from a major hurricane directly in a long, long time.
Well, members of the military across Florida are also getting ready, from inspecting search and rescue Jayhawk helicopters to preparing rescue boats and also filling sandbags. All branches of the armed forces are working to keep people in Florida safe. And people who need to be rescued are often trapped because of the storm surge, water, and not the wind. Typically kills more people and causes more damage. Meteorologist John Gum explains why it can be simply so deadly.
What is storm surge? Well, it's that push of water that comes in advance of the hurricane and as the hurricane makes landfall. You think of the winds out ahead of this thing blowing that water toward the coast, and that water piles up. the stronger the hurricane, the stronger the storm surge can be. So let's take a 3-foot storm surge, for instance, here. That comes up to the dune line along many beaches, may cause damage to the beaches. But when you start to get into the higher storm surge, maybe a storm surge of around 6 feet, which is going to be pretty common, it looks like, into the Tampa Bay area, that's when you start seeing flooding of homes adjacent to the water, adjacent to the coast here, especially on the first floor. However, with Idalia, it looks like we could get some storm surge upwards of 12 feet to the north of Tampa. And that is very bad news, because a 12-foot storm surge not just inundates the lower levels of structures adjacent to the coast, it can inundate the upper floors, the second floor of these structures. And this storm surge is the most deadly part of a hurricane. It kills more people than any other aspect of the storm. And this is going to be a danger in Florida as this storm makes its way toward the coast.
And we also cannot ignore Hurricane Franklin. The Category 4 storm is spinning 400 miles off Grand Turk Island. In the coming days, it will move away from the United States. Now, that's the good news. But the storm will create dangerous rip currents at East Coast beaches. To understand exactly what a rip current is and how you can stay safe should you ever get caught in one, we turn to meteorologist Veronica Johnson.
So what exactly is a rip current, and how can you and your family stay safe? Well, a rip current is just that. It's a current or channel of water that moves from the beach out to sea, and it often carries swimmers with it. So what's the best way to stay safe? Well, remember, rip currents will carry you out, but they won't carry you under. So the first thing that you can do is to remain calm and not to panic. Don't fight the rip current. Try to swim parallel to the shore until you're out of the rip current, or at a diagonal to the shore until you're out of the rip current. The average width of a rip current is about 80 feet. That's about 10 surfboards. So eventually you'll get out of it. And if you can't escape, again, remember to stay calm, to float or tread water. You're not going to go under, and eventually you'll get out of that rip current. And of course, call for help when you can. You're going to be losing energy if you try to swim back to shore without swimming diagonally. Remember, don't swim unless there's a lifeguard on duty.
And you know, hurricanes are tracked in several ways, and one of those is with weather balloons. Meteorologist Harrison Clark spoke with the National Weather Service about how they use the balloons and what information they gather.
Gulf of Mexico, the National Weather Service in Charleston is preparing ahead of time, starting with special balloon releases.
So on a normal day, the National Weather Service sends up upper air balloons that go into the atmosphere and sample what the atmosphere is doing. That happens 2 times a day. But if they think something is headed this way, then sometimes they'll send those up 4 times a day.
Collecting data from the upper levels of the atmosphere.
So what the weather balloons go up into the sky to try to find out is what the temperature is over top of our heads, the wind speed, the wind direction, the barometric pressure. And what they're trying to do is find out the environment around the hurricane, not necessarily inside of the hurricane, because the hurricane hunters are already flying through that system, giving us that information.
Data that will help nail down impacts.
And the information that those weather balloons get goes into the computer models and hopefully gives us a better forecast in the end.
And did you know more I-named hurricanes are retired than any other letter? Names are retired because of the storm's, devastating impact. 14 of the 96 retired names are I, such as Ian and Ida. Hopefully Idalia will not join that list. For all the latest and most up-to-date information on Hurricane Idalia, be sure to follow us on social media. We'll be keeping track of the storm, and 2 of our meteorologists will be joining us live on YouTube with the latest updates. Just scan the QR code on the bottom left corner of your screen to connect with us. And coming up on the National Weather Desk, heavy flooding in West Virginia yesterday led to several water rescues. We'll hear from residents about the long cleanup ahead. And we'll also look back at one of the worst hurricane disasters to ever hit the U.S.
I'm meteorologist Charlie Lopresti with a look at the Northeast. We're tracking developing sunshine today. Temps are going to warm back into the 70s and 80s. Both today and tomorrow will feature elevated humidity. And tomorrow will feature our next round of wet weather for most areas. Here comes some rainfall. That's about 11:30 in the morning on Wednesday now. There may be an embedded thunderstorm mixed in. This cold front's going to swing through Wednesday night. Those of you that dislike the humidity, we have drier air moving in with comfortable temperatures and a lot of sunshine on Thursday.
I'm meteorologist Jasmine Lomax with a look at the Mid-Atlantic region. We'll have a front stall over the region, leading to the chance for showers as we head into the afternoon. There could be some heavy rain, especially within thunderstorms. The rain continues overnight. We'll have a cold front sweep across the region. Behind that, temperatures for some a little bit lower. We'll reach the 70s and the 80s this afternoon. Then overnight, temperatures fall to the 50s, 60s, and 70s.
I'm meteorologist Vitas Reed looking at your southeast forecast highs. 89 Raleigh, 85 in Birmingham, 89 in Pensacola, hot one in Jacksonville, 92, 94 in Tampa. Really watching the tropics as the Gulf waters are very warm in the upper 80s, low 90s, helping fuel Idalia. It looks like it's forecast to become a Category 3 hurricane making landfall near Cedar Key, Florida. And then it looks like that track will take it across Gainesville, near Jacksonville, and then through Savannah and Charleston along the coastal regions, bringing as much as 7 to 10 inches of rain.
You are watching the National Weather Desk.
Charleston, West Virginia saw life-threatening flooding from storms yesterday. Flooding was so intense, a state of emergency was declared for the region. Bob Aaron tells us extensive flooding in the area yesterday was already primed for trouble because of weekend floods.
Hollow saw floodwaters move mobile homes, flood basements, sweep away outbuildings, and submerge and ruin cars. Some of the county's more than 20 water rescues came there. People were cut off from family members or trapped in their homes. Water-blocked roads and poor cell service left people uncertain what they'd find when access opened up to the hollow. Kara Kales was trying to make sure her mother was okay.
No, I haven't had any contact with her. I know she's at the Presbyterian church because my cousin managed to get her out of her home and to the church.
The area also flooded over the weekend, damaging at least 8 homes. Countywide, firefighters had 22 water rescue calls by Monday afternoon, including a 93-year-old resident and a dog trapped on top of its enclosure along Fields Creek.
No, he was free in his pen area, and he was on top of his doghouse.
Good thing you got to him, I guess, when you did.
Absolutely. He's going to go for a swim.
Flooding problems hit the eastern county hard as they did last August when storms trained over the area. Those flood dangers are not over. The weekend rains had left eastern Kanawha County primed for trouble. And now that more rain has fallen, it's primed for even more.
Flooding from extreme weather is becoming more common. Last week, we saw Tropical Storm Hillary hit the West Coast, and Idalia is set to make landfall tomorrow. The flooding that comes with those storms could become a major mold issue for homeowners. Incredible video capturing flooding at Cedar City, Utah, as Hillary moved through. At one point, water in the emergency room at Intermountain Healthcare Hospital.
There was a lot of water intrusion into the building, so there's going to be a mold problem. A lot of the carpets are soaked.
Mold-infested homes and businesses, a problem that could become more frequent. Dr. Mike Van Dyke from the Center of Health, Work and Environment points to climate change.
As the temperatures get higher, we're seeing more severe storms and more frequent storms, and I think that's what we're going to have to live with moving forward.
And this year, the mold risk is elevated. NOAA now forecasting an above-average hurricane season with an expected 14 to 21 named storms.
Those places that aren't prepared for large volumes of water being poured on them, that's the places where we're going to see, the most houses get damaged just because the infrastructure isn't strong enough to really support the removal of the water in those areas.
And 88 years ago, a hurricane made landfall in the Florida Keys that washed away the railroad that used to connect the islands to the mainland. And one of those rail cars were hundreds of World War I veterans that were living and working in the Keys at the time. Emily Gracie spoke to a meteorologist and train expert, Les Still, about the devastating impact of the Labor Day hurricane of 1935.
So they decided with this work progress project that they would send these bonus Army World War I veterans down there. And at one time, there were about 700 vets down there in the Keys working on these work progress camp projects.
So what happened next? Because in 1935, we didn't have radar. We weren't using satellites. This thing is coming.
Yeah, they started getting word like a day or two prior over in the Bahamas that, a storm had come through, and a lot of people in the Keys, they were a lot more weather aware, just observing it than we are nowadays. They would watch the barometer. So when they started seeing the pressure starting to fall, that's when they knew, okay, it's time to, put up the hurricane shelters and, board up the windows. So as you got into September 2nd, that's when the storm was really starting to head towards there. That morning, they had actually sent a cable to Miami to say, hey, look, we need a rescue train to come down here to get these people from these camps. They were in Matacombe Key, which is where one of the bigger camps were. The train did not leave until about 5:30 in the evening to even start its way down into the Keys. And by this point, the storm was making its full assault on the middle of the Keys.
So what happened? Did everyone on the train perish?
From what I understand, the majority of the people that got on the train in the passenger cars, I think it was a 10-car train, anywhere between a 15 to 20-foot wall of water is what the engineer said, came and sideswiped the train. From what I've heard, a lot of people that were in there, because obviously they didn't have seatbelts, were basically swept out the windows and swept out into sea. The majority of them perished.
Well, to hear more about the science of the storm, check out this week's episode of our podcast, Off the Radar. You'll be able to hear from Chanel Cleaton, the novelist that wrote a New York Times bestseller about the hurricane. You can find Off the Radar anywhere you listen to your podcasts. And tomorrow you have a chance to see a rare super blue moon. Meteorologist Natalie Walters posted on TikTok explaining what makes this full moon so special.
Once in a blue moon, right? Well, this is our lucky month because on August 30th, we will have a blue moon. Now, in astronomy, a blue moon is the second full moon of a calendar month. And on average, this happens about once every 2.5 years. But this one is extra special because it's also a supermoon, meaning it's going to appear bigger and brighter because it's closer in orbit to Earth. And that won't happen again until March 2037.
Autumn is almost here, which means cooler weather, changing leaves, and also apple picking. In Maine, the apple season is going to look a little bit different this year because of the unusually wet summer. Meteorologist Ryan Munn has more.
I'm a Mainer. I like a good Macintosh, a nice tart apple.
Sam Ricker is an apple farmer at Ricker Hill Orchards in Turner and Wallingford Fruit House in Auburn and says he is excited about this upcoming season. However, there have been a few challenges.
We had an early frost this year, right around bloom, right about May 17th. Some of our low-lying orchards got hit. We lost some crop there, and as you come up the hills a little bit, there's some rings where they got damaged. I like to say they were kissed by the frost.
Thankfully, Sam says this does not hurt the fruit, but will make it look less appealing. We've also seen quite a bit of rain.
With the rain we've had this year, the fruit's big. The crop's a little bit down from that frost, but there's going to be a lot of big, juicy fruit out there.
Ricker says a few storms had some small hail, and that has impacted the fruit.
So you'll see some trees here and there. One side might have a little bit of hail damage, but there's still plenty of good fruit in amongst the tree.
With apple picking typically in September, Ricker says with some of the cooler nights we've seen recently, the apples are starting to turn red, and they have a wide variety of apples to choose from. So it's nearly that time to grab the sweatshirt, head to your favorite orchard, and enjoy the crunch of a fresh apple.
And time now for a short break, but first let's take to the skies over Gallatin State Park in Pennsylvania.
Good Tuesday morning, everyone. I'm meteorologist Andrew Buck-Michael taking a look at your weather story across the Midwest. We do have a little bit of rain trying to move into the Great Lakes with a cold front, although for the rest of us, it's a lot cooler than what it was last week, so at least there's that, but it will be warm. A lot of 80s on the map there for us for the day today. Check out all the sunshine on the way across the plains and the Midwest for your Wednesday. Definitely a lot cooler there across the Great Lakes after that cold front swings through. And temperatures not looking bad here on Thursday as well. Pretty close to and just a little bit below normal.
Well, a good Tuesday morning to you. I'm meteorologist Chris Suchan. Look at our forecast across the region. And, of course, not going to be seeing an impact in our region from Hurricane Idalia. That will be the Florida Big Bend. Meantime, what we will see is temperatures in the 80s and the 90s, maybe a couple of showers or thunderstorm around New Orleans, also in the Texas Panhandle for the afternoon. And then Wednesday, again, the hurricane moving well away from the region. We get a lot of sunshine, drier air, still hot, 80s and 90s for highs.
Good morning. I'm meteorologist Rebecca Stevenson. Here's what's happening across the West with the excessive heat for the Southwest. We've got some fire weather concerns going into California as we're watching temperatures cool down, building up wind from the Pacific Northwest into California. So the excessive heat, in addition to this trough of low pressure, that is what's bringing us some showers and thunderstorms for the West. Much cooler, building up those winds for fire weather. That's the scene from here.
You are watching the National Weather Desk.
Summer is winding down and will soon turn toward the beautiful colors of fall. But summer conditions set the stage for how vibrant or muted those leaves will appear. Meteorologist Colton Williams has more from Oklahoma.
When we start to think about our summer climate in terms of heat, well, whenever we see more above average temperatures, which is abnormally warm days, as well as more warm nights, then we will see more of a muted fall color as opposed to if we would have had a more seasonal or even a cooler summer. Well, that allows the fall colors to be much brighter. And then in terms of moisture, well, we're still in a moisture deficit on the year, which as a result has the potential to delay our peak fall colors as we make our way into October and into November. The good news is for the month of August, we are okay in terms of moisture. So in terms of our September outlook, we're forecasting slightly above average temperatures, which that effect will lead to slightly less vibrant colors. Moisture will be near average for the month of September, which is the key month here.
We'd love to share your weather content on the air. You can find us at all of your favorite social media platforms. Just search the National Weather Desk. We'll be right back. thank you so much for joining us. We want to remind you that you can find all the latest on Hurricane Idalia and so much more by following us on social media. And tomorrow we'll bring you the latest as the storm makes landfall. I'm Angela Brown. Make it a great Tuesday, and we'll see you right back here tomorrow.